Okay, so it should be recording now. So this is the week 15. Congratulations. We have made it. So as always on the dashboard, we have the announcements, and I'm going to share the screen. Do you see it? Awesome. Okay. So week 15 is the final week of the course. The only thing that needs to be done for this week would be the final paper. And we have talked through it before, but what I'll do here on this video is just discuss the main ideas one more time for the rubric, make sure that everybody has clarification on everything. Courtney just asked a great question regarding the 4 scholarly peer-reviewed references. The textbook can be one of your 4 sources. So we'll just go through this assignment description, and then I'm going to make a couple points on APA, because obviously we've been working on APA throughout the course, but for this final assignment, it's really nice to just try and get it all exactly correct and accurate. So we'll go over that a bit too. So the final paper. So this is a research paper on the topic of your choice. Everybody's got their topics sorted out. And then we also want to make sure that we pull in the Christian perspective. That is the biblical perspective. So we need to see the source citation that's mentioned here in this second little mini paragraph, but we also need to see the Bible integrated. So that would be the specific scripture references. And we can pull those in, wherever you choose in the paper, but oftentimes they can be really effective and meaningful in the conclusion. So that can be a nice place to kind of add that punch of, okay, we're tying in the biblical perspective, we're giving the main idea again, we're restating the thesis, and that can be a good place to integrate scripture as you conclude. So the paper is 5 to 6 pages. It's okay to go a little bit past this, but it's not good to go under the 5. That would result in some points off, because we really need this to be a bulky paper and to have the depth of analysis, diving into this comprehensive description of what you're researching. And it's just a really cool opportunity to demonstrate the learning that we've all done in the course. So this little final paragraph here will hit on 5 to 6 pages. There's a cover page and a reference page. That's the APA format. And then the minimum of 4 references. It's okay to do more than 4 if you choose. And it must meet the expectations in the rubric. And I think you'll know this, but to find the rubric, click on the assignment, click view rubric. And there it is. So introduction and conclusion. Obviously, we want at least a firm, solid paragraph for the intro, firm, solid paragraph for the conclusion. A thesis statement would be generally one sentence that just is a really strong sentence outlining the main ideas and focus areas of the paper, and basically what you're arguing or what you want to share and address. And then it will be restated in the conclusion. So this is something that you might recall from when you were younger, working on 5-paragraph essays, and you've got the intro and the conclusion, the 3 main points. And then the thesis statement at the end of that introduction would be a sentence or so that is describing the 3 main points that you're going to outline. So when I say 3 main points, I'm talking about the 5-paragraph essay format. Obviously, this will be longer than that, but the idea remains the same. You want the thesis statement to really capture the main ideas that you're writing about. And drafting that out, reviewing, reflecting back on it as you continue to write the body of the paper is a good way to do it, because you'll get the opportunity to adjust it as needed and to add or subtract some information in that thesis. When you reach the conclusion, you will want to restate the main ideas of the thesis statement. Don't just copy and paste it, obviously, but to review what you were talking about in that thesis in your intro, kind of bringing the reader back to the start, to the main idea. And that's a really good way to have that strong conclusion. Another good thing to emphasize in a conclusion of a paper is, why do we care about this? What are the implications for the real world and for our lives? So if I write a whole research paper about anxiety disorders, for instance, and then I get to the end and I say, so anxiety disorders are something that can be studied in the field of psychology. You're like, okay, so, but if we talk about the effects that anxiety disorders can have on people in relationships, people who are parenting, people who are in the workplace and are struggling to manage this, or even for students, either in K-12 level who are dealing with anxiety disorders, or for those in higher education, how could that impact their performance and their well-being and the trajectory of their lives? And ultimately, how can we support individuals throughout our society in preventing some of these things from becoming out of control, and then B, receiving treatment and intervention with evidence-based practices and tying in that biblical perspective, that hope-focused transformational model and approach for the treatment of the topic, the mental health condition that you're researching. So that's an example when we're thinking about the thesis statement. Development and evidence, this category would be that you're using those scholarly sources throughout to do those in-text citations to support the statements. So that would be parentheses, author, comma, year. And then if you're using a direct quote, which you'll want to try to avoid too much of that because you really want to paraphrase things in your own words and add your insight. But if you do use a direct quote, it would be parentheses, author, comma, year, comma, page number. And if we don't know the year, it would be ND, N period, D period for no date, not dated. Critical thinking, obviously, this is just looking at your topic from different perspectives. The biblical perspective helps with this as well. Language and conventions and mechanics, that would just be strong sentence structure. So avoiding those fragments, avoiding run-on sentences. Convention and mechanics would be punctuation, grammar, spelling, making sure that your subjects and your verbs are in alignment and that your sentence structures are strong. The self-reflection, you can include your insight regarding what you have learned in the course and how the content is meaningful for you. And ultimately, with this part of the rubric, we really want to see that you're offering a new approach or a new perspective or application. Again, as we were talking about in the conclusion, what does this mean? Why do we even care? Why did I pick this? You kind of can call it like the so what. So that's part of the critical self-reflection. And obviously the integration of the biblical worldview, this would be pulling in scripture, not just one verse at the end, but really looking at the topic through the biblical lens. And a fun thing you don't have to do, but what I've seen work out pretty nicely for papers about topics in psychology is the integration of a particular Bible story. So we have a lot of good ones, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, that we could connect to our topics. And that's kind of just based upon what you're researching. You can review scripture and see what might be useful or helpful. But even if we're talking about interpersonal relationships and conflict, we can think of so many stories in the Old Testament. We think about Joseph, we think about various Cain and Abel, various families where there was brokenness or division or pride, and what was the outcome? How did it ultimately end up for those characters, for those people in the stories? So really diving into the scripture, not only with a verse, maybe scattered into the conclusion, but integration of the biblical worldview. And that's an amazing thing about being at CCU, is that we can do that in a really strong way. I think it adds an amazing dynamic to learning that is not present in a secular setting. So I find that really exciting. So take advantage of it. Make that biblical perspective a strong part of the paper. Any questions, Courtney? Sound okay? All right, sweet. So the last thing that we'll do here, this class will be a little bit shorter simply because it's our last one. And basically we're just working on the final paper at this point. But we're going to take a look at APA format just as a little refresher. So the website that I'm on, which you probably all recognize, is the OWL at Purdue. You can type into Google OWL at Purdue APA format and it will take you here. It is updated for the 7th edition. That's what we're working off of right now. So here on the left-hand side, you can find 7th edition and all sorts of resources regarding citations and references. And then down below, what we're going to look at today, which is the APA sample paper. And when I click on APA sample student paper, don't do the professional paper, we're formatting for student papers. We'll see this beautiful example with many different detailed notes. Bottom line, I'm a very visual person. Some of you may be as well. So this can be a helpful example because you'll see we need to go this far down the page, bold the title, do a space, name, and this other information. And this is just a fake person here. So we've got page 2, we've got our heading, and this paper will give you a good demonstration of how to most effectively use headings and integrate those in your structure. We've got some examples of source, citation, and quotation. You can see the indents between the at the start of the paragraphs, and then no additional space in between the paragraphs. That's another part of APA format. Here's another central heading and then a heading on the left-hand side to break down the literature review into smaller components. And the headings, you can see here are some others, can be a really effective way to organize your paper. So I'm just going to keep scrolling. You'll see more headings here. And headings can be based on prompt points or rubric points. So if you were going to do some to organize your paper back on the rubric, you could do introduction. And then you could do development and evidence and kind of create headings based on these. Biblical worldview, self-reflection. And that could be a nice way to format your paper. So on they go. You can see this is a lengthy quote. Again, we try to kind of stay away from this because we really want to integrate our own analysis and perspectives and our own words. And we don't learn much from copying and pasting. So try to stay out of something too lengthy. But if you're doing a longer quote, which would be a quote longer than 40 words, you would format this as a block quote. So that's when we have this indent and it's not in alignment here on the left with the rest of the paragraphs. And on down we go. You don't have to worry about this. This would be if you're doing like a research paper for publication or a dissertation, you might have figures like these in there. They will not be a part of our paper. But if you'd like to know how to do them in APA format, you can find out in this example document. And then we have our reference page. This page is very important to us. So you'll notice there's 2 different pages and then appendix. Don't worry about that either. So for the references, we are bolded here for the heading is centered, and then everything else is to the left-hand side. And it is in hanging indents. So that's when we've got these over to the left and then several others over to the right down below. And you'll notice they're also in alphabetical order based on the first word that comes here in the reference. Most of the time that will be the last name of the author. For instance, if you're doing an academic journal article. And on they go in alphabetical order. So we can kind of see the formatting there. So if you do end up unsure about something for APA format, I would really recommend the OWL at Purdue. And it's a really good resource for any of those questions for in-text citations. And the last comment that I would make is just really make sure that you're citing correctly. And what I mean by that is if you have information that came from something other than your own brain, it's important to do that author and year after that information, or if it's a direct quote, quotation marks, and then parentheses author, comma, year, comma, page number. And if we don't do that, we run into what we all know is a big problem, which could be plagiarism. And even if your intentions are not to plagiarize and you do want to be honest in your submission, it can still trip us up, and that can be a big problem, particularly at the college level. So the best weapon against accidentally falling into a plagiarism issue would be effective and accurate source citation. And if there's one thing you take away from that, put the quotation marks around any direct quote that you use. That's really the big kicker. It's all important, but if you can get those quotation marks in there, then we won't have to have a conversation about, oh, these are not your own words. And so that's just the best way to be better safe than sorry and just cite your information. And that's it for the APA aspect of things and the final paper. Sound okay?
Yep. That website I found was very helpful. And
good.
Like papers.
Good. I'm so glad it's free and it's just so nice, easy to access. There's a couple of videos that pop up, but for what we're getting from it, I will deal with some ads. So, oh, I'm so glad that it helped. Well, I am excited to review all of the submissions, and congratulations on reaching the end of the course. We'll be in touch, but we're looking good. This is all we have left to do. So cool. Thanks for being here.